I was born and raised on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and there we had a socialist workers' paradise, and it was Marx-Leninism, which was imposed on the society from the outside. Any gathering of people more than 3 had to have a party member overseer. And earlier on in the morning, we heard how the Prime Minister's office or the party leaders maintain control over the candidates who run for the party by having a requirement to have a signature on the nomination papers from there. Well, in Czechoslovakia, under the communist system or socialist system, in order to either apply for a passport or even to apply for a new job, you not only had to have a recommendation from your previous employer or your employer, you also had to have it from the labor union within your workplace, which of course had a party overseer, as well as your neighborhood association, which also had the party overseer. And if you didn't get those recommendations, you could not even apply for another job. And in that society, because you had the right to work, only people who didn't want to work didn't work. Therefore, they must have had some sort of an illicit form of income, and that made them eligible for very serious police attention, right? Even though this was very, very effective at controlling people's behaviors, it was not effective at controlling people's thoughts. For example, teachers, as a part of every lesson, they had to have an ideological moral component. So they had to file their lesson plans so that it could be, checked and make sure that they're all ideologically sound. But all classes, including mathematics and biology and physical education, had to have a component where you extolled the Marx-Leninist values and instilled the love for the Soviet Union. In reality, these components of the class instruction only got taught when there was somebody in the back of the classroom making notes because they were inspecting, whether it was other teachers, the party members, or the principal for evaluating. That's when it got taught, but it didn't get taught if there was nobody watching. Kids soon picked up on it. By the time I was in grade 7, when we went on an overnight school trip, as soon as the teachers had left and gone to bed, we took out a transistor radio and started listening to Radio Free Europe, which, if an adult had done it, would have gone to jail for subversive activity. But by grade 7, we didn't buy into the ideology. We were cured of it because we saw it. It was imposed from the outside. And we were allowed to see it because we were critically thinking. In North America and in the West nowadays, the problem is that we are not looking at the Marx-Leninism which is imposed from the outside, but we are looking at sorry. You said, I'm having a mind burp. Cultural Marxism. The term has been mentioned by several of the other panelists. A lot of people aren't aware of what cultural Marxism is. It is a very nauseous ideology that was concocted by Marxists in Frankfurt in the 1930s, and they married it to Freudian theology of philosophy of the mind, the Freudian theories on how to learn and teach and how our mind works. And they concocted this really, really toxic set of theories to deconstruct the culture and reconstruct it in a way that you raise Marxist awareness. They created group identity as the vehicle and political correctness as one of the tools to implement it. And while in our society we have a number of what appear to be completely disparate segments of society and doctrines within the institutions of higher learning, but together they work to instill this cultural Marxist thinking and use political correctness in a language in order to limit the ability to think freely. So by instilling this concoction in our kids' minds and by enforcing it through politically correct language, we are crippling a whole generation of people from being able to drop the shackles of Marxism and think critically for themselves. And that is what we really need to start to undo. And it is happening in our classrooms. A lot of people have spoken about this, I'm sure. But it's not only in how it's taught and what is taught, but what is not being taught. For example, I'm one of those parents. I spent a lot of time in my kids' schools in all kinds of capacities, from helping some kids to running milk programs. So I was just always there. And, I would come across students who would say be having troubles with math or something, and I would say, well, I can use the milk program to show them practical applications of math, and they can come and help me figure out how much milk we're going to need, and it'll help them, and they loved it. But no, I wasn't allowed to permit students to help me, because that would make it appear as though they need extra help in a subject, and it's much better to let them not learn than to make them appear to need help to learn. What kind of a system are we allowing to take control of our children? But it's not only in the school systems. Just going into the schools isn't enough, because now even private clubs are adopting that sort of a doctrine, because it's ingrained in a generation of the educators, even when they're doing it on volunteer time. So we have to take control. I will end on a bright note. I think that we're beginning to see the tides turning, because I have two sons, 15 and 20 years old. And whereas the 20-year-old, I have never seen anybody from him or his peer group attempt to rebel against political correctness. And with my younger son, I see approximately 50% of his friends beginning to rebel against political correctness. So I really think that we can see the end of the tunnel shining brightly. We're going to get there. We just have to make sure we take greater control of what is being taught to the next generation. Thank you.